Welcome to Pirate Living Podcast. We are your hosts, Karan and Kristen. On this podcast, we are highlighting ordinary people living extraordinary lives. These are pirates who take small, bold actions daily to create social change. Pirate life is all about rebelling and breaking the rules for good. Creating lasting social change starts by first breaking our inner rules. After all, the hardest rules to break are your own. The pirates we highlight have dedicated themselves to creating good trouble.
And today on our podcast, we are talking to Adam Chin. Adam is a language wizard and the co-founder of Procabulary and the Way of the Enlifted Athlete. Adam's also coined the nickname Mormons Gone Wild for Lance and me, and he's a modern-day pirate leading the charge for pirate living through the Enlifted Coaches Community. And Adam, we are thrilled to have you here today.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. Two of the shining stars of the Enlifted community. So thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. So we're so excited to be talking with you. And Enlifted is a community that's based on pirate principles. So we'd love for you to tell us a tale of what started you on your pirate journey. And then have you always been interested in pirates, or is that more marketing?
Mark certainly identified. He located the pirate analogy. He likes the idea of a pirate. I'm convinced that that eventually he's going to live somewhere in the swamps of Florida and in the Keys or something like that with some rum and a parrot. As far as me, I identify with the term pirate. I also like the term maverick. I think those two words have a similar root in terms of independence, in terms of living by your own code, in terms of living life on your own terms, whilst being aware and responsible about those around you and the environment and your situation, all that. So it's a responsible pirate. A maverick is a more aware pirate, let's say. Have I always been that way? Binary acknowledged, as your listeners may know about binary. I have been this way my whole life. I go back to really high school, and I was, if there were a group of people doing things in a very conventional way. And when I say conventional, it's like everyone's going in one direction. I would immediately question why everyone's going in that one direction. Let's see how much I want to reveal here. If we're having Spirit Week at school, did you all have Spirit Week when you were in school? Okay. So Spirit Week is a thing where you have, you cheer on your team. Well, my friends and I, we would do the opposite. We'd either cheer on the other team, we dress in the other team's colors, or we would do something really rude. In fact, I'm going to skip that part because let's just say it was very rude and very non-woke, some of the things we did in a very polite way, but very fun way. I would always look at things a little bit different. And I believe that's because of my background. I have a very different background than a lot of the folks that I grew up with. I grew up in the South and the North Carolina, South Carolina border there in near Charlotte. So we moved around all that throughout that area when I was a kid, and my parents divorced when I was young too. So my dad being Chinese lineage and from Thailand, I would go back and see him. I would travel in the summers to see my dad, and I would go into a very different culture, and then I would come back to the States. And this was in the 80s and in the early 90s when traveling was a big deal. Like, you could write a letter home and someone would get it in a few weeks if you're lucky. No internet, long distance phone calls only, very expensive long distance phone calls, which meant there were very short phone calls back home, and very little access to local media once you were away. So I would spend months at a time there, and it was very interesting. My mom's side of the family were, I would say, lower middle class, very struggling in a lot of ways. And then I would go to my father's side in Thailand, where they were upper middle class, and some of the extended family were wealthy. And it was like a juxtaposition because everyone's telling you, hey, America is the wealthiest country in the world. Americans are so wealthy. And I'm thinking like, well, in my case, my American family is all broke, and my Asian family who are living in a third world country have all this money. It was always upside down. So that could have helped in forming my contrarian view of the world. And I believe contrarianism is a part of the pirate's toolbox. You got to be able to look at things from a very different angle that is unpopular, and it doesn't mean you have to go that direction. Just your goal is to look into to observe from a different direction.
Yeah, I'm curious actually. Do you speak Thai then?
I speak a decent amount of Thai. It's better when I live there, and then I come back and I lose it. My wife's fluent. She was born in Thailand but raised in the States, so she's perfectly bilingual. Mine's good. I can get around on my own.
Yeah, I'm curious, as you know, a person of language, and we're talking about Procabulary and Enlifted. Do you notice a difference between the way the two languages manage conflict language?
It's interesting. Cultures, it's a cultural thing, and of course, we can get into the whole discussion of how culture and language, how they intertwine. You look at certain cultures in Asia, and they're very soft. They're very. Sometimes you could even use the word weaselly and how the language is and the culture is constructed. So in Thailand, there's a lot of soft talk, meaning there's a lot of beating around the bush, as we say colloquially in English. People they tend to talk around things, and they use qualifiers to soften a meaning, like we do. You see often in Britain. If you think about Britain, they use kind of, sort ofs, all the time. Thai people are very similar, and you also see that in Japan. Korea, less so, more so in Thailand and Japan, which is one of the reasons that Japanese do so well in Thailand. There's a lot of expats there. So I do believe that there is a lot more soft talk in that culture than there is even in the United States. And yet negations, there's a lot of negations too in Thai. Now that I think about it, there's a tremendous amount. There's a word, there's so many different ways to pronounce this word, M-A-I, and in Thai, that means, it can mean, depending on the tone, there's 5 tones in the Thai language. It can mean a variety of things, but the most common used word for my is no. And so the word in Thai for I don't want it, or is my ow, so that they say don't want. And you hear it all the time. That's one of the first 3 or 4 words that I learned in Thai when I was a little kid. So you do see that a lot. Now that you bring it up, I actually have yet to really put the vocabulary lens to the Thai language as much, but there is quite a lot of it.
How did Enlifted become a pirate organization that it is? Like, what is the story of Enlifted?
Well, I mean, the fact that Mark and I met while in Thailand at a hippie detox facility. I mean, really, founders are going to meet at a hippie detox facility where you're going without food for 7 to 12 days, and you're doing acupuncture and like, steams and weird fruit juices. I mean, like weird, like gross fruit juices. And that just begins the weirdness over there. That's the fact that we were over there, that we were living and marching to our own beat. Mark had gone to Thailand as motivated by his martial arts, because he was a early mixed martial arts fighter, in the 90s, and he wanted to become a much better kickboxer. So that's what brought him to Thailand, and he was teaching kids over there at international schools in physical education and a variety of other fronts. That's what brought him there. For me, I had just sold my stake in a company, and I had left, and I left the States with on a high note. And the company I was with really focused on training, and it really focused on personal development as well. So we'd worked with a lot of corporations and things like that. So I had a very traditional background in some ways, but I also had the urge to go over and explore that country and live on my own terms and take some time off and do my own thing for a while. And that brought me to a very strange hippie island where I met Mark. And so I believe that the DNA for exploring ideas and exploring paths outside of the norm is what really was what founded our movement. Like that's at the very core. I mean, you notice this, Mark and I, negation acknowledged, did not start Procabulary at a strip mall Panera bread company and like Salisbury, North Carolina or something like that. It happened in a very, very unique place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're grateful it happened because it led to our pirate adventures. So and adventuring and living off the edges of the map is a major theme with pirate living. So how has all the adventure that you've had shaped your pirate life?
Yeah, this is a great question. I thought about this deeply, and I really thought about it deeply during this COVID situation. And I had this very I'm very blessed to have had this opportunity to go over in 2005, 2006, and start living over in Thailand with a little bit of cash in my pocket and some connections over there, because that was right at the beginning of really the internet and social media, I should say, more specifically, taking off. So when I went over, we still had internet cafes. You may or may not know what that is, but there you had, if you wanted to go and reach someone back home, you had to go sit in a cafe somewhere and you dial up on a PC and log in a browser. And this is the sort of thing you do once every couple of days, 3 or 4 days, but you're off the grid for the most part. And I, I went to go visit my family, and then soon I branched out on my own, and I was doing my own thing. I was in the wild. I mean, I was hanging out with some very different folks, and I bought a motorcycle, and I was riding around the country and getting into adventures essentially, and eating very weird food that you would see, I guess, like on Andrew Zimmern's weird, what's this that guy's show, Strange Eats or whatever. Like it's something like that, like shrimp that's still alive and putting it in my mouth, and very, very odd things, and traveling to neighboring countries, and yeah, and it was very free. So that's the point I'm getting to. It's a very free experience, and there was no template. There was no paradigm, like you do this, then you do that, and you do this. I was on my own, and I had no idea what I was going to do when I got back. And I meant to go over there for a year. It ended up being over a decade. Mm-hmm. So, having experienced that type of freedom in my late 20s and early 30s, it's incredibly gratifying. It's in my Instagram profile. Freedom is the most addictive drug. I believe it's what I say. It's the most powerful drug out there. Once you taste it, what true freedom tastes like, it feels like, and it's hard to go back. It really is. And I would say that the counter to that would be the Jocko Willink quote of discipline equals freedom. Mm. So I discovered after a few years of that euphoria of being outside the edges of the map, as you said, Kristen, I discovered that you can go too far. You can't, a person can be too free. And I noticed a lot of people, I would meet people that had gone down a similar road as me, but they'd stayed there for decades. They were falling off the rails. They had no structure, no form to their lives. So I realized the limitations of that freedom, that I would be required in my life to create some sort of structure around it. And so that's when I started reversing, the path. But I did it in a different way. Other than going back to my old way of life, that was not an option, right? It was like, how do I build on top of this versus going back to previous lifestyles? And that led to entrepreneurship, that led to opportunities, including the one we're talking about right now, building out Enlifted and working with wonderful people like the two of you. So so that's a long answer to your very short question, and a really good question. Does that resonate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a really great answer, especially that freedom, there can be too much of it. Like that is a concept I hadn't even really thought of. So I really like how you pointed out there can be too much of a good thing with freedom. Did you experience that? Oh, go ahead, Karan.
What that brought to my mind is like, yeah, we living on the edges of the map, and we're still using our compass to guide us, or we're still using our code, our pirate code to guide us. And it sounds like you were at the point where you were living on the edges of the map without a compass and without a code. Would that be accurate?
That's accurate. That's accurate. And a little bit of that, a dose of that, a proper dose of that is integral. It can be incredibly healing. It can be liberating. It can help crush old stories, as we talk about with Enlifted. Too much of that, and one begins to lose themselves. I believe I began to lose myself in the edges. It's not that I would know negationing knowledge, but I can imagine this would be akin to someone going on a psychedelic journey that would take them. They would keep going and keep going and keep going, and then you lose the form. And we are here on this planet for a reason. There is in this meat suit, interacting with this material landscape. So perspective is nice, and that's what freedom gave me. That's what I gave me through the interaction with freedom. At the same time, structure is also good. So it's the balance of the two that's very valuable.
Was there a pivotal moment that kind of brought you back to structure? Or is it
it's more of a feeling? You're like, I'm good. I'm good. You meet enough people that have gone down that path and have lost the grasp of how to do things, how to be in the world that exists. It's the exact opposite of when you meet someone who is so rigid and so grounded and so, and they work the same job for 40 years and they're stuck in their little cubicle or whatever. This is a broad stereotype, but we all know the type of person. They retire and then they go play golf and then they're dead. It's the opposite of that. It's like, that's too much grounding. Well, this is like too much air. It's too ethereal. And it's like we're equal parts. The grounding forces, the earth forces, and the air. And the fluidity is in between. So that was a feeling more than a moment, to answer your question.
The picture of too much air in my head of those people. Like, you look at them and you're like, okay, you are living on another planet right now. So I see the picture now, the image. That next question is, what social rebellion are you looking to start, or have you already started?
Social rebellion? We talking like on social media or just in society in general?
Society in general, in the world.
Okay. Well, I mean, we have started this revolution, so to speak. It's small. It's growing. When it comes to understanding how the words that we use create stories and how those stories create our realities and how that cycle works and how the realities therefore are built with stories and those stories are built with words. So be very careful which words you use to build them. If we're using as I was telling Mike Schwartz earlier, suboptimal words to build suboptimal stories, those suboptimal stories will create suboptimal realities. And you can trace that back up and down the stack. I believe we can illuminate that for a lot of folks and empower people on an individual level, because we're living in an era right now where there's a tendency to celebrate the limitations and the grievances, the things that have been done to us, or the structures that are holding us back. And there's very little focus, it seems, on the power that lies within. And to me, it's like, I get where people are coming from. I get the instigators for those types of feelings. and anything worth anything is coming from me, from you, and from me, and from ourselves. I mean, it's like the government isn't going to give you the freedom that I was just talking about earlier. The government or some structure of academia is not going to give you the love of your life. It's like we must cultivate these things internally, and essentially create an environment for those things to a psychological, emotional environment for those things to be able to take hold, and for us to experience those things. So, and that's why we're so focused on the words, because they're so practical. I mean, some of the ideas I've discussed on this show thus far have been very ethereal in some ways. They're abstract, but the words you see them, you put them, you write them down, you look at them. Like, this is what I'm telling myself all day long. This is how I'm describing and articulating this world around me that I'm living in. And if those words are flawed or misleading, certainly inaccurate, well, then what's my understanding of my world going to be? Is it going to be limiting and flawed and misleading and inaccurate? Very likely it's going to be a reflection of that. So that's the revolution that Mark and I are, what would you call it, a social uprising?
Social rebellion. Yeah.
Rebellion. Okay. Well, that's as close as to a rebellion as I've started. So yeah, it's still ongoing.
I love that you said that about how practical it is, because I think, take out the thing, that is what really drew me to love Procabulary when I first started. It wasn't this like pie in the sky idea. This is practical things that I can do right now to fix my life, change my life, right? And it's something that I can use with my clients, right? That are looking for, give me the steps, give me the thing to do. And even though the whole idea of like, no one is coming to save you, you get to save yourself, you get to make your own changes. Having practical steps and things that you can do makes that such an easier transition than trying to come up with something, or like, I don't know what. But I really love the practicality of the program, which really drew me to it. So like, I know now what to do and how to do it. And like I said, it's been really impactful for my clients as well.
That's great to hear. I love hearing that, Karan. So keep it up. Keep feeding me the love here, because that's what fuels us, is that to see that this stuff is out there working with people, and you're doing this with your clients, and Mark and I have no idea. That's the beauty of it. The network effects of this is that this is going to go out there. Speaking of rebellions, this is going to go out there like a mycelium network, and it's just going to be doing things that we have, that Mark and I are. I turned to Mark during our last Lake House, what do we want to call it? A get together, an activation ceremony, whatever you want to call it. He hates the word retreat. Chronicles, yes. And I said, there is a good chance that people will be practicing this material when we're dead. Mm-hmm. And he looked at me, and I go, yeah, and just like, okay. It's one of those things where it's like it hits you, and you're like, okay, and then how does that change anything? No, we just keep going forward. We keep putting this stuff out there. So that's beautiful to hear, Karan, and I'm glad that you feel that way, because that's why we designed it to be practical, to be very inarguable. And you see it, you simply can see it. And my whole thing all along has been very practical stuff, in terms of, when I pitch it, I say, listen, you've got these thoughts, these ideas that are in your head. And the goal is, our goal is to make them clear. Okay. Clarity, get them focused. Okay. Make them more powerful. Okay. And add flexibility. So that can create a space for creativity. And each one of the components does that. The negations adds focus, translating them to affirmations. Okay. Soft talk, that goes more clear when we go solid talk. Projections go to affirmation, or to reflections, that makes it much more personally powerful. And then the binary, you go from, the binaries like every and all and only, and you translate that to some, and to sometimes or often, and that creates that flexibility, that space where people can be creative and breathe better. So it's whether you want to get crazy woo-woo with it, or you simply want to look at it as the words that they are, it works. And I like that.
Yeah, and it's cool because you're creating this legacy for yourself that you inadvertently that's going to carry on once you're gone.
And it's super simple. Like you said, it's to the point where as a teacher, I could use it with my students, and take that, turn it around, and real easy to like moving from I can't to I can do this with help. I can try, I'm learning, and like just teaching, take out the just, but teaching the kids like calming themselves, breathing, and then changing all those I can'ts or it's too hard, I'm too smalls into I'm learning, I'm growing, I can ask for help. And it was so simple and so powerful with my students too.
Yeah. And that makes us incredibly happy. You're doing the education thing. I mean, we've got a lot of coaches out there working with their clients. I, again, I wanted to make, so you are aware, are both of you aware that there's a system out there called NLP? Have you heard of NLP? Neuro linguistic programming. I've read a book on NLP. Okay. and there's some similarities that are in the programs. But the people who are involved in NLP generally are weirdos. I'm sorry. There's some weirdo stuff there. There's like because a lot of it's manipulative. The whole point is they're going to manipulate people. Essentially, I call it the black hat version of Procabulary. Okay. It's also very complicated and kind of dorky in terms of that they get really dorky about their tech. Now, there's also a thing called Landmark Forum. They're very good at language stuff as well. But I wanted to, when Mark brought this to my attention, this material, I go, hey man, let's make this the iPhone. Let's make this something my mom can learn how to do. Mm-hmm. So that's why we baked it down into something so simple. I mean, we could teach the primary concepts in 10 minutes. You know, but as you go deeper with it, though, you get the full understanding, you get the full power. And that's when you see in these coaching sessions, when you go through them yourself, or you see Mark go through them, people having these aha moments and just something that they've been carrying around with them for decades gets translated. And it's like, oh, crap, that's false, or that's completely misguided. There is something very different going on here. And I never, the words prevented me from seeing it and hearing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true that even for myself, having those aha moments, you know, from the regular kind of what we learn in Procabulary to working with Mark with the like, I can't believe statements and turning the I can't believes to I can believes and allowing yourself to finally move forward with something that you held a story of, I can't believe this happened for so long, for years, to I can believe. And now you can get to the space where you can actually deal with what happened. So I've loved just the impact with just minor language changes that has had with what we do, which is really cool to see. I know yourself and your clients, which is awesome.
It's the language of pirates, to put a bow on all this. It's a very pirate thing to do. I mean, what's more pirate? If we can get back to this, I'm going to hijack this podcast real quick. If we can get back, because this is something I want to talk to you about. What is more pirate than to literally change your language, to refine the English language so that it works for you? And that's a hack, right? I'm going to refine. I'm going to listen to how people talk. Okay, how they talk to me, how they talk to each other, and how I used to speak. And I'm going to refine that. I'm going to change it. Okay. So I'm going to hack my life that way. I'm going to hack my imagination. Okay. I always tell Mark, what's the most punk, which is also a synonym for pirate, maverick, punk, pirate. Okay. What's the most punk thing you can do in 2021? I mean, and the answer is there's a few things. One of them is certainly take care of your health. You know, we got a lot of great, you know, fitness coaches, nutrition coaches, present company included, involved in this space. And, you know, taking control of one's body and nutrition and taking responsibility for one's eating habits, one's understanding, again, of language, of their immune systems, of their own financial, potential. So Mike Bledsoe, who you both know, correct? Okay. Yeah, he's in the way of the Enlifted Athlete, of course. You know him there too. He had a good point he mentioned to me a few years ago. He said that, we live in this society where everyone's outsourcing everything. They outsource their education, they outsource their financial goals, they outsource their health. We outsource everything. And so what would be more pirate, more maverick, and more punk than to take control of that responsibility back, at least gain an understanding, and then you can collaborate with specialists later. But if we have an understanding, we have a control, because it is the most important thing. This is our spacesuit, this is where we're at. So to me, that's a very punk and very pirate thing. And I wanted to share that with you both.
Well, I thank you for that, because that's my social rebellion, is working with women to teach them about their bodies and their hormones and their health, because I find women's health often gets swept under the rug. Oh, it's just something you need to deal with. Oh, you hurt every month? Well, that's life, woman. Deal with it, right? Or as you age, yep, perimenopause and menopause, yeah, sucks. Nothing you can do about it, right? All of these things that we get told, or we don't talk about, and educating women on their hormones and what is happening with them and their bodies and how they can actually fix that, rather than using Band-Aid solutions like hormonal birth control. So, instead of fixing your hormones, we're just going to shut everything down and give you some this prescription so we don't have to worry about it until whenever. That's my rebellion, right? Is working with women to empower themselves to, still working with their healthcare practitioners if they need it, right? But being armed with some knowledge and things to at least to know what to ask for or what to negation, acknowledge, not settle for. So I love that you said that, because that's really what, my practice is all about with my coaching. So that really resonated with what you said.
I love to hear that. Yeah, there's so much, when you go into a hospital, you go to, an allopathic doctor, and you come armed with a good solid foundation of how the body works and how again, it's a foundation. Now you can have an intelligent conversation with someone. I use the example of Steven Spielberg, great filmmaker, right? So everyone knows his name, Steven Spielberg, Indiana Jones. Okay, everyone knows who this guy is. Tremendous movies. I would say a very mediocre camera operator, probably less than mediocre sound person, worse than that at wardrobe, or and likely the worst actor if he had to act on the set. But he understands each one of those crafts enough, and he understands the power of those crafts, that he can have an intelligent conversation with each one of his collaborators on the set. So when he goes in, he can do the job and do it very well, and he leaves it to them to do to exercise that. But he can collaborate with them because he can understand what they're doing intelligently. And you contrast that to what I was mentioning earlier, when we outsource everything and we have no ownership, no knowledge, no intelligence. And we're simply do whatever you want. Well, you're the expert. It's like, it's like, you tell me, well, should I get this mortgage or that mortgage? It's like, you're going to get ripped off, or you're going to get misguided. And also, it's not just about rip off artists. It's about, and people taking advantage of you. It's, your collaborators would have a bad idea or a very poor idea of what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. So how could you expect a medical doctor or a financial person in your life to guide you in what you want in your goals if you have no idea what you want in your goals? So does this resonate with you? Is this a very pirate thing to talk about? Because I feel it's very pirate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this myself recently, where when I was allowing people to help me make decisions on things, and I knew it. I was fully like, I don't feel like making this decision for myself, so I'm going to let this person help me decide. And I allowed them to hijack my brain, basically, by not taking ownership in what it was that I was wanting to decide. So even if they decided the same thing I ultimately wanted, I was allowing other people to come in, and that I realized, and this is also a recent realization, like I was allowing people to hijack my life, my brain, and tell me what they thought for myself. And it got so muddied in my head that I no longer was fully aware of what is it that I truly want. So it's very pirate to start taking ownership of all of that?
The term that I've heard used is called psychogeographic positioning. So imagine if we're in a sphere, and the proper orientation of the self should be at the center, and then there are people and objects and things moving around us. Okay, and if we use a lot of projections, and we outsource a lot of our lives to these other forces, well, then now we're on the outside. So there's nothing at the center. We're being tossed around in this orbit. There's nothing holding the gravity together, and we become a secondary character in our autobiography. And that is a very tragic and frustrating and manic place to live. So whenever we can ground ourselves back into that core, it becomes much more rewarding.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue into our next question. So what, in your opinion, what is one of the most uncomfortable questions someone can ask themselves when they're starting to look to create their own rebellion or to live a more pirate life?
It comes back down to the question. You have to question everything and be comfortable with what you believe to be true being untrue. So, and I'll use vocabulary terms here. Be comfortable with what you believe to be accurate as being inaccurate, and being detached from that, and just saying, listen, I'm here to observe, and I'm here to try to find and define accuracy. So I'm going to have to question a lot of things that I believe to be unequivocally, so fundamentally true and so fundamentally sound, like oxygen. I'm going to have to question these things that I was told as a child, things that I was, drilled with at school, things that the media influenced me to think and believe. And I take the leap of saying everything's on the table. Mm. Okay. And for a lot of people, that's very disorienting. And yet you have to go, again, chaos. It's like the freedom thing. It's like you have to go into that chaos space. So then when you can then build it back, when you go back and you reconstruct it, it's because you constructed it versus your environment constructing it. So it's the same theme that we talked about earlier to kick off the show, is to go crazy, to build chaos, and then to create order from that chaos of your own design versus what society has or your family has in mind for you. So it's interesting how that all tied together. As if I meant to do that. Yeah, right.
Totally on purpose.
Weaving it together.
Yeah.
Well, Karan, didn't you have a question about identity too?
Yeah, well, we talk a lot in Procabulary, and Enlifted about, our words creating our stories, create our identities. And one of the things that came up for me that I wonder if you had an opinion on or an insight on was the whole kind of the identity of, the, what are they called now? Like the introvert, extrovert, INTJs, that type of thing.
Myers-Briggs. Yeah.
Myers-Briggs, thank you.
Yeah.
And if that is something that you think is more flexible than what we are, led to believe, and if our language can change those sort of kind of things that we identify with. I was wondering if you had an opinion on that.
Well, that's a great question. I'm a big fan of the Big Five, which is, I believe that preceded Myers-Briggs. It's similar type of personality trait questionnaire that people take. These things are really good for understanding the baseline, sort of where we're at the moment, what we're dealing with. For me in the Big Five, I'm very much a disagreeable person with surprise, meaning I can say no, and I like saying no, and I enjoy doing what I want to do versus what people tell me that I should do. #pirate. So knowing that, and knowing that's something I'm working with, I tend to mix in a little bit of agreeableness from time to time, because I know I'm coming from that place. So I'm gonna push back on that a little bit by being more agreeable, or certainly open to the possibility of being agreeable. And also understanding how agreeable people would do what they do. So in terms of changing that, what I say that we can change those things about us. Well, I mean, what do they say? Every single cell in our body is recycled in every 7 years. So I mean, we are technically different people. I mean, just, and that's I know that's a bit hippie woo woo science, and at the same time, there's something poetic about it, right? There's something we are changing, and there are qualities about us that change as we grow, as we change through the seasons of our lives. I mean, I'm different now than I was when I was a teenager, for sure. There are certain parts about me that are very different. So yeah, I think over time those things can change, and we can craft them. At the same time, I think they're also very, very valuable to see, as they say, know thyself, right? You have to know what you're dealing with, and then act accordingly. So it's a good compass.
Yeah, and we were talking about this earlier before the podcast. Just the idea of like introvert versus extrovert to me is more of definitely more of an energy thing, right? Like I don't consider myself to be really shy. I love being around people until I'm done, because it's very draining, versus like I know my partner is an extrovert and he just wants people around him all the time, especially when he's drained, because it gives him the energy. And that's why I really enjoy things like Strengths Finder. I don't know if you've done that one.
No.
But it's a similar thing with like the personality questionnaire. And then it gives you it ranks everything by your strengths. So your top 5 strengths all the way down to I can't remember how many there are, like 30. And what I liked about that one is that the strengths were very much like, yeah, I knew that. And to see what my bottom 5 strengths are, because they don't call them weaknesses, they just your bottom 5, and then being able to work with that, right? So, as a top strength being a connector, which is very easy for me to connect one-on-one with people, and one of the bottom 5 is like something more about social and being with lots of people. And as a coach and dealing with lots of groups of people, then I get to work on that bottom strength and make it improve upon it. So kind of like what you're saying, know yourself, have an understanding of where you can work on. And that doesn't, to me, change my personality or who I am. It's just working on a strength. So it's just something that we were talking about earlier that I was really curious to get your insights on.
Well, there's some people out there. There's a guy that I like reading. His name's Ben Thompson. He writes a blog called Stratechery. And he wrote this post a while ago. He writes mostly about the tech industry, but he's talking about careers and about what we should focus on as we build our careers. And one of the things he said was that we live in a world now that really rewards specialists and special people who are really good at something. So if you're really good at something, you're going to get rewarded, because there's just so many people and we're all connected on the internet. We're very mobile with our feet in terms of where we can move and relocate, et cetera. So lean into your strengths is his point. And then, the discussion forwarded to, well, what about your weaknesses? So if you have these things that are weak, should you spend, if you had, say, X number of 100 hours to play with, to either really dial into your strengths and make them amazing, like to take your strengths from 0 to your next level, to like, you're one of the few people in the world that are this good at what that is. Okay. You had say 100 hours to do that. Or you had that 100 hours to then dedicate to your weaknesses just to get to, say, 0 or -1 on the scale. Right. Well, his theory, and I happen to agree with it, is that it makes a lot of sense to focus on those 100 hours on your strengths and make you very, very special. And then you find people in your life to be complements in those weak areas. Okay. Now, I would say the one addendum to his theory that I would place in there is that if those weaknesses are so weak that they sabotage your strengths, then they must be addressed. meaning like, it doesn't matter. I mean, you see this all the time with like musicians and artists. They're just so incredible at this one thing. The rest of their life is a train wreck, and it sabotages their careers. It shortens their careers. You see it with athletes. You see it everywhere. I mean, it happens. Binary knowledge. You see it in many places. So that's my rule: is that if there's a weakness that's so detrimental that it's going to sabotage and shorten whatever my gift is to the world, then I must address it. And if it's something, it's a special gift. This is Mark to a T. This is Mark. The relationship Mark and I have is that Mark literally does one or two things awesome, unbelievable, and he leans 100% into that. He is okay, that's somewhat unfair. He's less interested in taking the weaknesses and getting them to zero. He wants to do this, and that's all he wants to do. Train coaches, do language work, bring people together. That's it. Boom, 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 boom. Every day, hammer that rock. And he has this phrase that he uses, like, underthink it. And I like to say, yeah, just like Mark, underthink it, because Adam's back over there and behind the chair, behind the desk in the chair, overthinking it. So it's a nice balance. It's so if that's the same in your romantic relationship or any situation you find yourself, if you can find a complement to that, to your strengths and weaknesses, that would be ideal.
And on that overthink it, you one time told me, like, think about it the right amount and then stop. So the marrying the middle ground of the two. Give it the right amount of thought and then stop thinking about it.
I love it. I'm glad I said that. I'm glad you reminded me that I said that. Yeah, I tend to do that. I think about it these days. I used to overthink it, like neuroses style. Now I'm think about it enough and then I stop. And I've cut it off a lot. So thank you, Kristen, for reminding me of that wisdom.
It was a good one. I want to hear a little bit about the app that you've been working on. So what can you tell us about that?
Whew. Oh, wow. 8 months, I believe we've been working on this. And we do every day. We're working on it. We literally Saturdays, Sundays, because all of us have other things going on. So this is labor of love, and we're eventually going to turn this into a business really dang soon. It's so professional. Oh my gosh, we're so lucky. We have Eric Blackwell, who you know very well. And he's such speaking of compliments, like, the guy is full energy. He's very intelligent, very competent, very on point. So he's building and providing the structure to keep all of the talents, so to speak, and he's one of the talents too, on the same page, and making sure we make progress, and we making sure we address things as they pop up. So, he's been fantastic as the product manager. There is Cameron, Karan, do you know Cameron?
Don't think so.
Okay. You'll know Cameron. He's part of the team too. He's an Enlifted coach. He's certified now, level 1, and he's our developer, super bright guy. We got Xavier, who the two of you have yet to meet. He's our design lead. He's fantastic. Again, both of these guys, these young guys, they're young. They're under 30, or they're right around 30. Super bright, very hardworking, and very positive people. So all this is going into an app, and the app's purpose in life is what we call draft and craft. Okay, meaning you heard Mark use this analogy before. So what happens when you turn a first draft in when you're in school? Kristen, you know this.
Yeah, I did it often. I didn't get the grade I wanted.
It sucks. It's bad. A first draft, you crammed the night before, you turned it in. It's poor. Sometimes if we're really good and really lucky, we squeak by, right? But if no, it's usually what we deserve, which is a bad grade. Now, if we draft and then craft them with revisions, those ideas that we're expressing on paper get better, and they get better, and they get better. Okay. And then they're ready to ship. They're really fully formed, fully considered ideas. Now, what would happen if we applied the same system to our thoughts that pop up into our heads every day? What would happen if we were to draft and then craft those thoughts versus simply running with the initial assumptions? Mm-hmm. And what if we could do that as a journal? And what if we could do that in the most frictionless way possible with our voice? So what we built is an audio journal that is guided with coaching, that will have video/interactive lessons from Mark, and will allow people to record their voice. It'll be transliterated on the spot. You'll see all the words that you were using. You can refine those words, make sure it's what you said, and then you go in and it's magic translations. We show you, hey, you said kind of there. You said maybe, sort of one day. We're going to highlight those, and you can eliminate them. Very quick, one stop translations. Eliminate those words. Soft talk gone. Now we get a clearer statement. Oh, all these negations in there. Here are some options. Click on those options. See if you can translate those. Oh, that's nice. Get rid of those. Oh, here's some binary words, and so on and so forth. So you get a instantly crafted thought. So we help you craft your thoughts, and we do it in the most frictionless way possible. So our goal is that for a lot of people, it's gonna replace, certainly, I would say, strengthen their journaling practice, and if in some cases outright replace it. And for long walks, people going on walks, they have a brain dump. They got an idea they've been working on. As we say, let it out and then sort it out. Mm-hmm. So draft and craft them right there. And it goes back to our reason for being with Enlifted and Procabulary. It's like reducing 1%. Can we reduce 1% of the world's unnecessary suffering, confusion, pain, stress, anxiety, just with changing the words? If we do that, man, mega win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. That's really exciting. I can't wait for that to come out. So tell us, what are you doing to throw better parties than those that are trying to destroy the world?
Oh, how controversial do we want to get here? Parties, okay, I'll speak diplomatically. I'll say this. I would like to create parties in which people felt very comfortable with being themselves and expressing themselves in a way that will be greeted if you go to a party. It's a really crappy party. People are trying to impress everybody else, put on a show. If you make a mistake, if you say something that, perhaps you should have kept to yourself, and that's what you think in your head, right? Because you get greeted with some terrible reactions. People judge you. They instantly peg you as something. No. At an Enlifted party, what you can do and say whatever it is that you want, and people will be extremely generous. Their initial inclination is to take whatever you said in the most generous way possible that they can possibly interpret. So if you say or do or be away, they're like, yeah, that person is really on to something, or they want to express something, or they are expressing something that's very important and very, very real. So I would say that's number one. Judgment's gone, curiosity here, generosity here. Number two, I would say freedom. Come for freedom at a party, getting drunk and throwing up and all that stuff. That was for the high school days, right? We're having Enlifted parties now.
Yeah, I can't.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I can't wait for the borders to open out so I can attend one.
And I have, every single time I get in a group with Enlifted people, it's, there's so much love there. There's acceptance. And I have a great time with everybody that I meet, whether it's in a small group or a larger group. And they're all there to have fun and to be accepting too of and they're curious about everybody else. Like, what are you up to? What have you been doing? And it's the place that I want to hang out. So.
It's when you go to these things, it's, to me, what stands out immediately is it's one of the most encouraging environments I've ever been in. It's highly encouraging. And, we a lot of people, we hang out in very discouraging environments these days. There's lots of discouraging news and discouraging, ways of being out there. And we get into these groups and it's just like a big bottle of white pills, as I call them. Have I mentioned the white pill, black pill thing already in this show?
No.
Oh, do you know about this theory? It's pretty interesting. So, the Matrix, right? There's the red pill, the blue pill. You know about this? You take the red pill, you're going to leave your old life behind. You're going to go down to some rabbit hole. Well, there's the white pill, and then there's the black pill. The black pill is, I'm taking this pill, everything sucks. The world's going to hell in a handbasket. My life's okay. No. There's too many of those out on the news, too many of those out on social media, too many of those out in the world. You go to an Enlifted event, it's like taking a whole bottle of white pills. Like, you're ready to take on the world. You're cranked up. You're ready. It's like, nah, this world's an amazing place. Everybody's awesome. Everyone's got amazing potential. That's what those get-togethers are all about. White pilling.
Very cool.
There are drugs. They're white pills.
Where can our listeners go to find out more about you?
Me personally,
Enlifted.
Enlifted. That's an easy one. They go to Instagram at Enlifted Coaches. Kimberly Kesting, who is the community manager, is there, and she's awesome. So you find us there. Enlifted.me if you want to learn more about the CERT, which is an awesome program, of course, that both of you have gone through. Me personally, I'm on Instagram occasionally at Adam S. Chin. Adam, then the letter S, and then CHIN. I was telling Mike Schwartz again earlier, I'm exactly the age where I feel lost, because I had the internet when I was in college and a little bit in high school, but social media came along when I was in my 20s. And so I'm still, as a Gen Xer, I'm still getting my head around how often should I be on this thing? It's one of those things. I believe social media is generational, and I may be on the cusp.
As a fellow Gen Xer, just embrace it. Embrace it for what it is, a platform to tell your story.
See, as a Gen Xer to Gen Xer, then let me say, that's a very optimistic take for Gen Xer. See, there's still that cynical part of me. You know how the Gen Xers had that reputation as being very cynical. I have to get over that when it comes to social media, my distrust of the companies that run it. And I will take your advice accordingly. I will start seeing it as a way to express my story.
Yeah, I think
a storyteller. So.
Yeah, for me, the biggest change came when I stopped consuming and started producing.
Ooh,
yeah,
that's a good point. Okay, well then, Karan, I will ask you this: how would you, now that you've met me, and Kristen, you can answer this too, please. How would you like to see me use my social platform? What would you like to see from me personally online?
Well, as we've both have taken another Enlifted coach, Kyle Gray's Story Pro program, I would love for you to use that to share your story of how you founded Procabulary, Enlifted, the language game, and the impact that that's had on your life to inspire the rest of us to continue or to start the journey with Procabulary and Enlifted.
Good pitch. I'll consider it.
Yeah, hearing a new perspective on the language, and I love hearing everything you have to say about language, and I want to hear more on Adam's side of it.
Mm-hmm. It's all Mark.
Right. We want to hear Adam too.
He would like that too. He's like I said, he would, there's part of him that's ready, because he said 1,000 coaches. I'm going to certify 1,000 coaches, and then he's going to move to the pirate island somewhere, and he's going to have a parrot and a case of rum, and we'll in his school bus that's psychedelic design school bus that he lives in, and that's going to be his dream life. I'm telling you. That's and he would say, hey Adam, you go run with it, you and the whole, and you too, Kristen, and you too, Karan. Great transition there. That's the future. You want to know the future of this movement? It's you. It's the two of you. It's the community.
Mhm.
That's the future. We're two dudes who met in a crazy hippie island in Thailand 14 years ago. The future is the community, and that's what Kimberly's been brought on to do, and to nurture that and to showcase everybody. Because if this is going to make the 1% dent that we want to make, it's going to have to be many hands making little work.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're grateful for that community. It's been so huge. I mean, that's how we met and why we're here today. So.
Absolutely. Well, great time to call it a show. Thank you both for inviting me on. This is great. I love being interviewed by people that I like a lot. So this is good stuff.
And real quick before we wrap, do you have any pirate jokes that you
Oh,
know? We have one
pirate
if you
jokes?
don't.
Pirate. No, you tell me a pirate joke.
Yeah, it's gonna be real good. How do you save a dying pirate?
I give up. Tell me.
CPR.
Oh,
Yeah. I told you it'd be great. Especially with my pirate.
Oh wow! I'm gonna go have
On
to take
that note.
go do another detox just to detox myself of that joke.
This is how I get you off.
Wow.
The
What a
podcast.
Yeah. All right. Thank you both again.
Thank
Wonderful
you.
seeing your faces and talking with you.